You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again as we are kind of limping into a hump day midweek type of vibe, trying to catch our breath after a wild and woolly 2 weeks as the Red Raiders looking to break a losing streak and the circumstance in which you're challenged to do so. Oh, just arguably maybe the toughest setting that you faced so far, given the team, given the environment, all of the above. It's Iowa State and Tech coming up on Saturday afternoon. And I want to get to some of the reaction to what was said yesterday between some sound we listened to from Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire, our conversation on the program, and sort of an outlook on the future of this program that's come about as a result of some of those things this week from obviously a man that carries great influence regarding its future. But first, just going directly to Saturday. And one thing that I was still kind of left to process after our conversation yesterday, like, did I just hear what I think I hear regarding Behren Morton and the way that they're going to approach the quarterback position after what looked like nothing but bad news there in Fort Worth. And so I'm imagining now some scenario, obviously, where Morton is good enough to go. We talked about that a little bit yesterday as well on the program. And him being in there, but still being a guy that's hit with some non-throwing shoulder pain, which I love to hear thrown about so cavalierly as if a non-throwing shoulder, well, it's practically not even attached to his body, so not going to be any big deal to get over. Easy to say on a podcast and things like that, couches or otherwise. But I'm kind of thinking about entering November or getting dang close to it and maybe seeing a bigger workload than we've seen before for a guy named Tahj Brooks. Is that possible if you were to get into that kind of setting? Talked about what the offense could look like with Will Hammond, but what do we actually think it looks like with a sore or in pain Behren Morton?
Yeah, I think, and let's just, for purposes of this conversation, let's just assume that that this is going to be the Behren Morton show at quarterback, because I'm trying to see real quick, like statistically, like where, they give up. Okay, so Iowa State gives up 170 yards a game on the ground, which is actually not great. Where they're really good is in the passing game. But I think you know what's tricky here about your situation, and it is tricky, is I feel like Run DMC right now. I met this little girly. No, I forgot. Sorry. It just struck me funny. With your situation with Behren, because you know what's really hurt Iowa State this year, or what's hurt them the most, is I think UCF really hurt them with a lot of QB run game. On purpose and the ability to kind of make them pay, because what Iowa State's scheme is such that I think generally it's like a 3-3 stack. And so when you look at it like on TV, it looks like there's like a light box is what the football term would be. Like there's 3 down linemen, there's a linebacker in there. It looks like there's all this empty space. As soon as you snap it and you run it, it's like there is no space. It's actually like an 8-man box. They are all in your face. They all tackle really well. This is just typically speaking, and I think that this version of their defense is as good as any. I don't know if there's a bunch of NFL guys over there, but they're playing really well. Now, if you look at their schedule, they haven't just played a daunting schedule. Point being, they've given up some rushing yards. I wouldn't have guessed that it was 170 a game, but I think that the QB run game is really what has hurt them the most. And so if that's Behren, and he's playing with a bit of an injury on the quote unquote non-throwing shoulder. That's a bit dicey, is it not? And that's not necessarily his game either. Whenever you've seen him run it, it's almost by the element of surprise. Like, hey, I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna keep it, and then it's like, you kind of, you maybe see that 2 or 3 times a game at the most. And I don't know if you want to put him in harm's way this way. I think ideally, Will Hammond would be but if Barron's healthy enough to play, how do you play that game internally? So that's just something to consider. But to your point, you're going to get a few opportunities for some deep shots, because I think typically what people will tell you about Iowa State's defense is it's a lot of zone coverage because they're playing the run first. That's what they really want to shut down. But then past 10 yards, then it becomes man-to-man. But you've got to be able to block long enough. That's tricky for the Red Raiders, but you've got to be able to block long enough to get to that point. And you'll get some deep shots. But those are I don't know whether that's 4 or 9. I don't know how many opportunities you'll truly have. You got to hit some of those. That's what opens up things for a guy like Tahj and the RPO stuff and things like that. But I do think, especially if the weather's bad, I do think he'll get a heavy workload. But what does that look like? I mean, he's going to carry it 25 times no matter what, you would think. But I mean, how about if we mix in 10 to 12 from Jacoby Williams too? And I think you maybe want to. I think this is a 3-man front, and I would say, because you've seen a variation of this because let's do a little history lesson here. Who was coordinating North Texas's defense came from this Iowa State tree. He worked it with John Heacock. The guy that was coordinating Cincinnati's defense came from this coaching tree. He worked with John Heacock. Everybody's trying to copy this scheme and borrow from it and steal from it. It's very similar to I think what Mark Adams and like a side defense. It's like very rare is it that somebody kind of like comes up with a brand new concept and it's like, oh my gosh, this is. And that's kind of what you've got going here. And he executes it really, really well. And people have tried to hire that away. Like, we want some of that. And so Texas Tech has seen some of this before. Typically speaking, this year they have played and run it better and blocked better against the 3-man front as opposed to a 4-man front. I don't know if now this is the best version of that. Okay. So maybe it does mean you have, because it's fair to also say that Iowa State hasn't really seen anything like Texas Tech's offense either. I mean, the best win on their schedule is maybe over a 5-3 Iowa team. Question mark, and heck, maybe one of the better teams they saw, we just didn't know it at the time, was Baylor. And keep in mind that game got lopsided early, and then the wheels fell off of the Bears like early in the third, and then it ended up being a blowout, which can happen to you in Ames. So I think that's I know I've probably kind of talked around your question and tried to answer it all in one, but I'm just trying to give you some context there for all the things to think about and to consider.
No, I think it was all important to consider because you started with the paradox that it is, hey, we might want to run a QB here a little bit to take advantage of a perceived weakness, at least statistically speaking. Oh, yeah, ours just got knocked out of a game last week. So, I mean, it kind of all starts there, doesn't it, offensively, I guess, maybe this week. Now, thankfully, again, you got 28 to rely on, but the load has been heavy. He did miss a game already earlier on in the season, but I think just came off of his second biggest day as far as attempts. I think he hit the 30 mark in Fort Worth, had 32 earlier in the year. But it's kind of crazy to think about, what we discussed coming into the year. Like, hey, sure be easy, or sure would be nice if you could take it a little easier as the season went on Tahj Brooks. And I don't think you're in that position, obviously. Sure, he wants it. So I'm sure he's fine with toting the rock as many times as he's asked. But I do wonder if we start to see, maybe due to some of those reasons, wear and tear and stuff like that, as the season goes on, a little more dose of Williams or Dickey. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app where you're going to find the best last-minute deals, and I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. Of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. I do wonder if we start to see, maybe due to some of those reasons, wear and tear and stuff like that as the season goes on, a little more dose of Williams or Dickey.
I think number 20 is ready to enter the chat. I really do. I think Kenny Perry spoke to the media yesterday and kind of said as much, that, and I don't know if it was specifically asked, is Jacoby, has he passed up Cameron Dickey, or is it just we need a different style? We need contrast in style. We need somebody, because the one thing about an Iowa State team is they are typically really good tacklers. To run this scheme, you have to be, because you gamble a lot. And rare is it that they give up the big play because they're such sure tacklers, or there's just so many people around. But what's imperative, if you're going to beat them or hurt them, is you've got to be able to make guys miss. And I think Jacoby Williams can certainly do that. So I'll also throw this out at you. If you do have Barron playing, this is a twofold deal. I just wouldn't be surprised if we were to see, I don't know, maybe a small dose of Cam Brown, because you know what hurt him 2 years ago. If you remember, Tyler Shuck ran QB power over and over and over again, and he wasn't hammering them, but he was getting his 5 to 7 regularly, and that's how you ran the game out. And you're not in a position to do that right now, unless it's a guy like Cam Brown, or unless you say, because the thing about Will Hammond is, man, I just don't think, unless he's the starter, I don't know if you want to like put him in there and like burn a game. You're trying to. Will would want this. This is how these kids, and he should. He like, man, I don't want, unless I'm going to really play and do it, like keep going. I don't want to burn it one of my years, and that's the way coaches don't want to put a kid in there that you're just gonna. That's just typically not how it operates, and that's got to be a two-way street there on some of that. Now, if Barron can't go, and it is Will's game, then that's what you'll do. But that's even tricky too, because he's got 2 more games he can play out of the rest of the 4 and still maintain. So we'll just kind of see how that looks. But if it is Barron's game, I mean, maybe, you're tipping your hand a little bit when Cam Brown comes in, I would think, like, okay, not really any secrets here. This is what we're going to do. But I wouldn't rule that out as you try to figure out a way to use your, but it's pretty clear that Will Hammond had passed up Cam Brown as far as, trust and execution and all the stuff, and the ability to run the offense, not just be very one-dimensional, but just, again, trying to throw things out there to make sure people understand what this may look like, or what you may be able to do to hurt them.
I thought we were kind of sniffing around a Cam Brown mention this episode, possibly coming up, and there it is, something to consider. And, whether it's him or anybody else with the ball in their hands, it ain't about the trickeration. It's about enough hats on hats and moving those guys out of the way, keeping those hats on hats, whether it's offensive linemen, tight ends, or other backs, and making a space. And it was another weekend where obviously that was not done to the extent that you would like to see it, as you were shuffling a little bit up front with Dalton Merriman sidelined. So you had a little bit of a different look. But either way, at the end of the day, execution is the name of the game, right? So get out there and get it done. And I'm sure there will be some room opened up for Brown or Brooks or whoever it might be. But
if it's a weather game, I can almost
guarantee. It's supposed to be, right? I think there's a better than not chance for some moisture, even though it's going to be like 60, 70.
Yep, like upper 50s, lower 60s, and like a big time chance of rain. But if it's a weather game, and Barron is your guy, I can almost guarantee you that at some level you would see some Cam Brown, just because that may be what this game becomes. Because when you play these guys and like Kansas State, it's kind of the same. It's a limited possession game. Iowa State's one of the top teams in the country on time of possession. You're just not going to get the ball that many times. And typically in a typical game with them and with a weather game, you're going to have to consider playing the field position game, similar to what you did, I guess 2 years ago when you won 14-10 up there. And that's when your punter becomes big. That's also when it becomes like you're sitting there talking about, you got to be able to break tackles. You've got to be able to tackle really, really well. And the biggest thing you'll have coming into that game is, sure, you want to tackle well, you want to take away the ball and all that stuff, but limiting explosives. Like you can't. You just can't, because their defense is so good. You just can't give them easy ones. You're going to have to make them drive it, make them settle for field goals, stuff like that. But in a weather game, I think Cam Brown could enter the chat for sure, just like Jacoby Williams.
I don't mind the reminder either. You mentioned Tyler Shuck doing his QB power thing in Iowa State at Iowa State against these Cyclones. And I was also just struck by the thought, also a guy that had an injury in his recent past at that time, which he typically always does. But that was a game where I'm puckered up tighter than a snare drum down the stretch thinking, okay, we're using him as the sledgehammer. That's still number 12, and he's had the path that he had to that point in the season. So I don't know, maybe there's something healing about that frigid weather up there in Ames, where maybe Barron is feeling a little sprier than he might be otherwise. I mean, that was a crazy thing to see come about, but one that you executed successfully, and that's how you put the game on ice. While others were on ice again, just because of the climate. It's kind of strange. You refer to the rush defense there for the Cyclones, and it's strange to think about them being like a handful of spots back, I think, in Big 12 rush defense rankings from Texas Tech, even as bad as Tech has been defensively, mostly coming at the expense of their pass defense. It's the opposite for Iowa State, as they've got either the top ranked or the second best ranked in the Big 12 conference as far as defending the pass game. But they just came off their worst day a couple of weeks ago against Central Florida, Chris. I think it was darn near 10 yards per carry for the Golden Knights, and I'm not making that up. You had some big plays. You had almost, I think, 600 or maybe a little over between the two teams on the ground.
So guess what they've probably worked on?
That's a good point. For 2 weeks studying what they did wrong.
But what they don't do, they'll give up some yards. But what they don't do is they don't let you score. I think they've given up 5 rushing touchdowns on the season. They just don't let you score. And they maybe some yards between the 20s and things like that. But ultimately, it's about how many points you're allowing an opponent to score. And they're, only giving up 14 a game. So they just don't. It doesn't hurt them, I guess. They're kind of making you snap it again, make you snap it again kind of deal. And ultimately, you're going to have to be really good, excuse me, in the red zone. Would be nice if you could be like you were at TCU last weekend, from the standpoint of you got in the red zone 6 times and scored all 6 chances, 4 touchdowns and a couple of field goals. So that would certainly work for you on Saturday. But realistically, if you get to 28 or 31 points, you've done. That's twice as much as what they're again on average what they're allowing. So, but I don't know if that's doable or not. I guess we're going to find out.
I don't know what you would see specifically if you were pouring over Central Florida, Iowa State film, but I hope the Tech coaching staff has been doing just that, because we talk about the rush yards. You mentioned the points, and another superlative there for the Cyclones as it relates to their season with 35. Last time out was nowhere near in the universe that they were living in defensively in some weeks prior. So maybe, again, something figured out by the Golden Knights you can try to emulate here 2 weeks later. But I don't know. I kind of view Matt Campbell's team as one that would have their attention gotten over the span of 2 weeks, and a game plan drilled in and some lessons learned following a day like that. And I want to get to this on an upcoming episode this week, Chris. We don't have to very deeply here today, but maybe one of the best quarterbacks in the country that nobody's actually discussing is the guy we'll see there in Ames too. So they're dangerous in a lot of different ways. It's not all about what's happening defensively. I want to get to this before we get out of here today as well, because the natives are restless again. Natives are restless again. Whether it's the 806, the LBK, or now worldwide because of the wonders of technology across all of Locked On Texas Tech Nation. There's some restlessness among Red Raider fans, to say the least, here this week. And I wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things. One of those things, a reaction to something said by Joey McGuire, as he related a stretch of bowl games and some success there that they have a chance to, well, they're already in the midst of it, but sustain again before this season is done. And it seemed like great umbrage was taken by some that bowl games would be mentioned, or I guess even referenced as a standard or something out there for Texas Tech still to achieve this year, when you had higher hopes, I guess, otherwise. And I'm kind of curious how you think this dynamic works down, because I've seen the comments as well from plenty of fans that, hey, this team set our expectation, or this head coach set our expectation as high as we had it, and now we're not getting there. So there's got to be, I guess, some justified disappointment somewhere along the way. But what do you think about the bowl game part of that conversation? Because that used to be a thing that sort of was taken for granted.
I mean, was anybody picking this? I mean, I know we didn't. Was any, and not that you shouldn't or shouldn't want for, but was anybody picking this team to win the league?
I was having a hard time. We were skeptical a few weeks ago. We said, ask us November 3rd, I think.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and ask us now, though.
And I think my deal was like, okay, they're a real contender if they win 2 of the next 3, and they've lost the first 2 in that stretch.
Get some road success under your belt.
But I get you should want to win. You should want to win all of them. I think Joey's standard is always going to be a Big 12 championship. They're going to keep chasing that. They're going to keep striving for that. That's the ultimate goal. And if there's more past that, which that's what that takes you to, if you do win that or play for it or whatever, it does open up some other opportunities for you. But they're always gonna. That's the goal. And unfortunately, this program has not really sniffed one of those, because people act like the Leach era was this golden era, and in a way it was. But you never sniffed a championship then. I mean, in your golden year of 2008, you were 3rd in your own division. You know, I mean, like you didn't even make it to a BCS game that year. I remember getting after you got beat up by Oklahoma. I know it was the way the tiebreakers and the rankings worked and all that stuff. But I remember when you got beat up by Oklahoma and the reality kind of set in, and you came back and played Baylor on Thanksgiving weekend, maybe, if memory serves. And Graham kind of hurt his hand, and Crabtree kind of hurt his foot or ankle or whatever it was. And it was just kind of this flat feeling like, oh, this is just, and you realized, okay, you're going to go to the Cotton Bowl. I remember somebody on his staff texted me and goes, is there any way we can make it to a BCS game? And I'm like, man, the way that the BCS worked, it was like, no, it's just the way the rankings worked and all that stuff. The answer was just no. Not that the Cotton Bowl is some bad, but again, you had, 3 or 4 weeks earlier, you were like, we could be competing for a national championship, or at the minimum, maybe they send us to the Orange Bowl or the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl, whatever it was. Instead, you went to the Cotton Bowl and played Ole Miss and got beat in that game. But I don't think anybody should misunderstand that the goal is always going to be, and that team over there, they're always going to break every huddle. Grant McCaslin's team is going to do the same thing. They're always going to break the team huddles in March and in April and in August and in whatever, until you're just mathematically eliminated Big 12 champs. I mean, that's the goal. That's what you got to speak it into existence and all those things. I think that they realize that in the current structure, their second conference loss, that you if you went out, you're still in that conversation. Sure, it must require a win in Ames, though. That's the one that you've got to have in your back pocket. The next most important is the one against Colorado, because they are 2 teams ahead of you in the standings. You need to have those tiebreakers. I think what he's trying to say is, and keep in mind, you're coming off of an emotional loss that they would all tell you they should have won. And as I pointed out to somebody on the Matador Mob group earlier today, or last night, I guess it was, that, I mean, you could have also lost, like, well, you should have won BTC. You could have easily lost to ACU. You could have easily lost to Cincinnati. I mean, those games were, if a kick here or there, or If Maverick McGyver doesn't quite underthrow a pass in the end zone as he's throwing into the end zone and in regulation, I mean, it could have easily. So the margins are just razor thin, I guess is my point. But yes, you should have won in Fort Worth. But with that, it kind of takes you don't control your own destiny anymore, I think. And they had talked a lot about that. But I don't think that by any means anybody's trying to, back it up and say, okay, we don't want to be good anymore, or we're not going to strive for greatness anymore, or we're not going to do this or that. But you're trying to get your kids motivated and trying to dangle a carrot in front of them and tell them, hey, there are things we can achieve in this program to keep it pushing forward that hadn't been achieved around here in a long time. Because I've seen some of the commentary. Joey's just, okay, so we're seeing Joey's just a high school coach again. Joey doesn't know how to manage a team. Fire this coordinator, fire that coordinator. Nobody knows what they're doing. And it's like, I get the passion, I get the frustration, but part of me is like, he did just have back-to-back winning records in the Big 12. That includes wins over Oklahoma and Texas. He did win back-to-back bowl games. They won the one previously that Sonny Covey coached. You do have a chance to win 4 in a row. I mean, and there's some things that, again, what the last 9-win season was 2009. Is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and what year is it? And so, I mean, that's we're in the mid 2020s here, and so I guess by him pointing it out, he's just trying to explain to him, because our stated goal was you want to play relevant games in November. You didn't quite get there, but you were picked 9th in the league. I think everybody thought you were very much middle of the pack. Now, what blows that up is people see either the Oklahoma States that were picked to maybe win it, or the Arizonas or the Kansases or the Utahs, and they've fallen way short. But then you've got the BYUs, and then obviously I think Iowa State was picked around 6th, I think, give or take. And it's like, well, these teams weren't picked to do anything, and look where they're at. And Colorado even, I think, was picked maybe below you. So that's the beauty of sports. And I don't think anybody's trying to dumb down expectations. I guess some of what we got into on the previous show was I've had people going, I guess my point ultimately is that if you are aiming for a 10-win season every year, good on you. However, you're probably going to walk around like a miserable cuss most of the time, because that hadn't happened around here in a long time. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop working toward that, recruiting toward that, coaching toward that, stating that aloud, funding the fundraising efforts and donating and all that toward that. But it's hard, and there's very few programs that are like that, and you're not really in that category yet, but you're just trying to be relevant. And as you said, it wasn't too long ago when it's like you weren't even going to bowl games, like plural. Now all of a sudden you've gone to 3 in a row, and it's like, I guess, not that that's not good enough, but I guess people are upset that would be the bar, and that's not. Nobody stated that. Joey's always going to tell you Big 12 championship. That's really the bar. He wants to graduate from being 500 or being slightly over 500. He wants to kick the door in, and that's what they're trying to do. So, have you fallen short to that? I mean, at this point, there's a possibility that you have. Yeah. Now, if you were to win out, then I would say we'd all be dancing around going, because that would be a 9-win season. And maybe a spot in Arlington, maybe not. But so I hope we didn't confuse or, and maybe I haven't answered exactly what people are frustrated with either, Cowan. So you can
there's two groups. There's 2 groups, Chris, that I've generally picked up on today. That's one of them, the Bowl Umbrage group, which I just thought was interesting. Obviously, is the fan that I am, I'm like, wait, should we? I don't know. They're sounding kind of nice to me, just getting back to setting that, what I've called a baseline pulse for the program, which is, I think, kind of where you've returned to. Again, not that that's the end-all be-all. It's certainly not. But the second group, I guess, felt like Locked On Texas Tech in our conversation yesterday put them in detention. I think I saw that thought expressed for the way that they were feeling, as if we were saying, don't feel that way. You're not allowed to feel that way. So that was the second contingent.
Yeah.
But we'll turn them loose. I mean, you can get out. I'll even give you an early hall pass for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I'll never tell people how they should feel. And I mean, we're all allowed to have our opinions and agree and disagree. And I'm never going to tell a fan specifically how they should feel. Now, a sober fan versus a drunk fan. Now, maybe that's two different things, but I just don't know if, because we had one of our awesome Matador Mob folks go, "Hey man, I'm sorry. I was I had drank too much Saturday night, and I was kind of laying it on." And I'm like, "Hey dude, I get it, man. I totally get it." No, that's what's fun, and that's what's fun about being a sports fan too, is that I'm ready to line up and get my heart broken again and just do it repeatedly over and over and over and over again. But like the times that you do win or get a road win or get a meaningful win, it's like there's no better feeling in the world. And it's like you feel like you're the king of the castle, and all the stuff. So, and you have an opportunity like that this weekend. I mean, nobody's going to expect you to win this game. You're double-digit underdog and all those things.
Trying to avoid a typical teching a couple of weeks ago. Now I'm trying to stumble into a typical teching.
Embrace it. Sure.
This is the other side. Let's do something unexpected. This time a lot more enjoyable if you're able to do so.
Yeah, I had some people, maybe I phrased it wrong, and I'm an idiot a lot of the time, and I certainly own that. But I had a few people going, like kind of voicing their displeasure to me on my cell phone about, okay, I guess just another normal year, another this or that, and like I think I responded back to them. I'm like, are you just used to winning like 8 or 9 games around here to where it's like that's just like normal? Like you should be kind of used to this, which is not a good thing. But like, when did you all of a sudden become so entitled? I mean, because that's how I view like Alabama and Ohio State. Like they thumb, like if Oklahoma or Ohio State or Bama, if they get a certain bowl bid, they're like, yeah, we're not even going to go. Like, screw it. Like we're just. I'm like, have we graduated to that? And that's not. I didn't mean to come off like that, but I just want to see, and I think everybody wants to see progress. That's what you want to see. Is the arrow pointing up? Or have you flattened out? And I think you want to continue to see the arrow pointing up, and you still have time to be able to do that. So that's my point. If I frustrate anybody, nobody's in detention. I mean, heck, I'm sure everybody wants to put me in detention. I was in Miss Stovall's detention back at Arlington Heights High School, back in Fort Worth many times for depositing a overhead projector out the second floor window, and I probably deserved it. And so with that, I would ask that please let me out of detention. But yeah, we not tried to tell anybody how to feel or whatever. So
I've heard that's the cover story, but the on the ground intel says it was for necking with the ladies out behind the old auxiliary gym. But maybe we'll never know. Feel however you want to feel. If you want to be in detention, or otherwise. Some of you may need to be in there. I don't know. Maybe you need a chill pill, Bill. Blow some kill, Papa Seal. Chris, the top 20 I have on the screen as you're talking about the arrow of this program, the trajectory, was something that stood out to me just kind of as a result of the last 48 hours of frustrated conversation on social media or RedRaidersports.com, wherever it's been. And I've seen from one Cody Campbell stated clearly, top 20 program is sort of an intent, as I shouldn't say sort of, but that is an area in which they want to reside. And I thought it was kind of interesting just to hear, because you do want to state where you want to be and you want to define what you want to be. I think Texas Tech historically is typically as an athletics department, not just a football program, but been in the realm of justifiably a top 30, top 35 kind of operation in the nation. And that's fine, but expectations a little bit higher. But I thought it was really interesting to hear him say top 20 football team or program is what they've got their eyes on, and what that would actually look like.
You know who you're trying to be, and we've referenced this in the last several months. We've kind of talked about this, and that's why it's so shocking that they've kind of fallen off this year. But like you're trying to be ultimately is like what Oklahoma State was. I mean, they had a decade and a half long stretch, actually a little bit longer, where they were, I think it was 7 or more wins every year. And then there's a lot of 9 and 10 win seasons in that stretch as well. And the hardest thing to do in sports is to do it and do it again and again and again. And I mentioned to you like Nick Saban, who was doing it at the highest level, because sometimes you could have just a special team. Well, they leave and it's like, okay, I can't replicate it. But some of these folks were able to, it didn't matter the cast of characters. It didn't matter. Coaches came and went. They were able to figure it out and schematically recruit to it, execute it, and then go get results repeatedly. But that's to me, when I hear that, that's close proximity, what you're ultimately trying to achieve. Because I think Gundy's worst year was his first one, and his next worst year is going to be the current one right now, depending on how they finish up. And let's hope that includes a loss to the Red Raiders the week before Thanksgiving. But in that stretch, it's like 17 or 18 years of like, it's like either 7 or more wins or 8 or more wins every year. And that's pretty stout. And that's the epitome of what a top 20 program is. But it's all about consistency. You can't just get 1 5-star and go, yeah, okay, we're good. You can't just donate this or have a recruiting class here or have one season or one good side of the ball here and there. It's got to be it's got to be consistent, and you've got to continue to do it. And that's the hardest thing to do in sports, especially in this sport, because there's so many things that change every single year.
Yeah, no doubt. That level of consistency is achieved by very, very few, certainly. Chris, appreciate the insight as always, man. We got a couple more before we send you off to the frigid north. I know you're excited as always to maybe get back to some beef broth. I've been talking with the dietary and supplement folks up there. Have been chicken broth previously. I'm saying let's get the chickens out, get the beef broth in. Although it did power you to a degree last time out, so maybe we should keep it the same. But I know you're excited, man. Can't wait to get back to Ames, right?
You know, it's insanely cold when you're just in one of those tiny little styrofoam cups and you're just looking for a little steamy chicken broth to try to shake and drink without it pouring all over yourself. But yeah, luckily it won't be like that this time. This time I just need an umbrella. So go figure. On some tall natural grass, not that kind, but yeah. So anyway, we're going to be dealing with some weather, I think, this weekend. So who knows, man? Maybe something crazy will happen. I'm here for it if so. Yeah,
keep the heat alive with the hope this week as you're headed up there. It's a little frigid in the 806 also, man. Enjoyed it. We'll see you for the next one.
Yes, sir. Sounds good.
Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the Everydayers for being out there as always every day. And shout out to the Matador Mobsters as well. If you want to become one of those, hit the show notes and check out the link for a free 14-day trial. It's your direct line to Chris and myself. The one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. And one of the best ways to help us grow the show is to comment anything below. So dive in and do that. Thanks to those that do. Do it again tomorrow. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.